Well, welcome back for another edition of Commissioner's Corner. I'm Josh Brown, Kitsap County Commissioner representing District 3, which is Central Kitsap. And again, I'm with Burnette from BKAT, who has a few tough questions for me.
Oh yeah, man.
Engage in some conversation.
These are really tough questions. Josh, let's have an update on the CK campus, especially the library. There's been some action there lately.
Yeah, this past week we had a really fantastic presentation from the Kitsap Regional Library District to the Central Kitsap Community Council. And the presentation was led by Steve Rice of Rice Fergus Miller, local architecture firm in Bremerton. Now, where we're at right now, the county has a memorandum of understanding in place with Kitsap Regional Library District. And what that memorandum of understanding says, so we're going to make every best effort to partner with the library district if they choose to build a new branch library in Silverdale on the community campus site next to the YMCA. We're going to make every best effort to be a strong partner with the library district. So this was their first presentation of what their vision is. You know, the community hasn't seen a picture or a plan of what a library, what it would look like next to the Y, and how big it would be, what type of architectural features it would have. So it really was an opportunity to begin to get that public feedback. And the library is in an interesting place because, right now they're in a facility that's only a couple thousand square feet in Silverdale. I've been amazed to learn that, on any given day they can have between 500 and 1,000 people coming in and out of that library branch.
Yeah.
The summer times when kids are out of school, it's a very busy facility. But I think of 500 people a day on the low end. My graduating class in high school was less than 300 kids. So you think of 500 people coming in and out of just one little facility. That's pretty impressive. So the library district, along with looking at building a new library next to the YMCA on the community campus site, they're also going to be looking at possibly leasing property in Silverdale, whether it be at the mall or in another vacant parcel in Silverdale in a little retail center, to be able to relocate and expand a library branch. I think their preference has been to be next to the YMCA in a building that they own, but they're going to look at every option and try to do what they think is right, relying on the feedback from the community that they're beginning to gather. And the other dimension that I think needs to be pretty clear for the public to understand is that the library district has failed now twice at the ballot box to build new libraries and expand services. The last measure that was put before the voters would have paid for a 17,000 square foot library in Silverdale. They're not going to go back to the voters a third time. Instead, what they're going to do is, if it's a plan to build a library in Silverdale, they're going to look to the community to raise the money for that branch.
Good.
Not through a tax measure, but through raising the money. The flip side of that is that the library that they would be able to finance is smaller than 17,000 square feet. They're thinking in the 8 to 10,000 square foot range right now.
Much smaller.
But still much larger than what we currently have in Silverdale. And hopefully with enough parking and all the other amenities that they need. So that's what we're working on right now with the library. And again, this was their first kind of public meeting to kind of roll out what the plans are. If you've read the Central Kitsap Reporter from this past week, you'll see the article in there about it. And we wish them the best. Hopefully we can finally build this new library in Silverdale that the community's been desirous of for many years.
Right. And what about a performing arts center, Josh?
Well, the vision for the Central Kitsap Community Campus, now that the YMCA is complete and has been
Do you think the Y will get any members? Holy moly, they are rocking it there.
They have a lot of members.
Wow.
And if you've been at the Y in January, you see a lot of people who have New Year's resolutions that they're trying to keep by losing a few pounds and trying to work out a little bit more. The Y's been a massive success.
Huge.
And I was kidding with folks at the meeting with the library the other day in front of the community council that the problem now, when we started the Y project, I had a lot of folks say, well, are people going to use the facility? Will there be the community support? Now it's hard to find a parking spot. And we know at some point we need some type of parking structure to be able to make the community campus what the community has
Mhm.
envisioned all these years,
Mhm.
pedestrian friendly,
Right.
a nice community hub. You can't have just all surface parking and be able to accomplish those goals. And we have a lot of very good ideas that went into the design of the YMCA in terms of how we'll eventually be able to build a parking structure. But we need to get the financing.
Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
county isn't in a place where we can go out and build a parking structure. So we're going to have to be creative like we've been over the past 6 years that I've been commissioner to try to get things done, but be very fiscally sensible about how we get there. So the parking structure is definitely needed, and and again, it's I know it can frustrate folks that there's not enough parking, but it's also a sign to me that we're very successful and we're headed in the right direction. If that parking lot was empty, that would be a bigger problem than having
Right.
a parking lot that's too filled.
Mhm.
So we need to come up with a plan for the expanded parking. We're working with the library on how they can be a co-tenant at the community campus site along with the YMCA. And then the third public project that we're really wrapping our arms around is the plan to eventually build some type of performing arts center in Silverdale. Years ago, 15 years ago, the Central Kitsap School District had proposed a bond to build some type of performing
Mhm.
arts center. That
Mhm.
those monies went to Clahalia Secondary School and other worthwhile projects, but there's still the demand in Silverdale for performing arts space. We do not have a facility in Silverdale and Central Kitsap that's adequate. I grew up in North Kitsap and right by the high school in Paulsbo, and we had a fantastic little theater that was, granted it was old,
Mhm.
but it was a great little theater that when I was a kid growing up, I was active with drama and plays and musicals. It was a great facility for the arts, and it was something that we all utilized quite a
Mhm.
bit. And
Mhm.
if we didn't have that theater in Paulsbo growing up, I know my experience, as a teenager in Kitsap County, would have been very different than
Mhm.
what actually happened because we had that amenity. So we need that in Silverdale. And we've been lucky because the Birkenfeld Trust has shortlisted the community campus project and a performing arts center as one of their priority projects to potentially
Nice.
finance.
Excellent.
But what we need, Char, is we need a group of community leaders in Central Kitsap that are willing to step up to the plate to form a nonprofit,
Mhm.
create a operating entity, own and operate a performing arts center.
Mhm.
The county would be willing to lease the land to that entity, but they need to step up to the plate and form that nonprofit to be able to make this dream realized, and then hopefully not only put together a strong business plan, but be able to secure the financing to build that center. So as we're looking at the community campus project with the Y completed, the highlights would be we're partnering with the library to build a new library. We're trying to figure out potential to have some partners step up to the plate to be able to come up with a plan to build a performing arts center. At the same time, I'm taking the lead on trying to figure out what are our options to build some type of parking structure so that the campus can be
Mhm.
what the community's
Enjoyed by
envisioned.
everybody
Yeah.
and not worry about
So,
parking.
so some
That's
exciting
very
things. I
cool.
mean, I look back in 2007, my first year on the Board of Commissioners, and
It was
since
a
that
dream.
time, yeah, it was a
Yeah.
dream in 2007, and since that time, we've been mired in the most difficult recession our country's faced in a couple generations,
Mhm.
and for us to be now talking about making a second and third project come together on the campus after the success of the Y, I think that's pretty incredible.
That's pretty incredible.
So,
You're absolutely right.
a lot of work in front of us.
So I understand you're instituting some office hours in Silverdale, and folks can come and meet with you, make appointments, and tell us about where you're having some office hours and when.
Well, I had a meeting this past year with Melody Eisler, who is the librarian for the Silverdale branch. And Melody, I believe she came previously from Idaho, from Boise, and she had suggested to me that when she had worked at another library in Idaho, that the mayor of their city would come down to the local branch library and have open office hours. Well, one of the things I do as county commissioner is Mondays and Wednesdays we meet at the courthouse in Port Orchard, but I try to clear as much of my schedule as possible to be able to meet with constituents in Silverdale. So, generally, anytime I'm free on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm in Central Kitsap, and then Fridays I'm in Central Kitsap as well, working on constituent issues. Well, Melody had this great suggestion. Why don't I, since I'm trying to get out and meet with constituents on issues, why don't I come down to the library in Silverdale and spend a couple hours, open office hours, just let folks come by. So our first open office hours in Silverdale at the library in Old Town happened about a week ago. We had about 10 folks drop by.
Nice.
I got to meet with about 20 Montessori students who had tougher questions than their parents. They asked me how old I was, and when I told them how old I was, then they wanted to tell me how old their parents were, and it made me feel a little old for the first time
old.
in a while. But so it was a great experience. So we're going to start scheduling these office hours monthly.
Excellent.
And
last week of the month, is that what you're going to do?
you know what? We don't know when we're going to do it in February yet, but I'm hoping to get it planned
Good.
out so it's on a regular time so folks can come
Great.
visit with me.
Great.
And Melody and the Silverdale Branch Library, I can't thank them enough for their hospitality. They've helped promote it. And
Do they actually have a little office space for you, or are you out just in the open of the library sitting at a table?
there's a little office in the back, a little open space where I was having my office hours. That's also the area where they do the book sales, the used book sales.
Nice.
So if you go to the Silverdale Branch Library, and if you've ever bought a paperback book, as part of their fundraising, the Friends of the Silverdale Library, I'm usually going to
Nice.
be back there. And it was really nice because I had folks come by who read about it in the newspaper or saw a flyer, and they came by with permit issues and questions that I
Great.
was able to work on,
Great.
saved them a trip down to Port Orchard, saved them some time. And then I just had some citizens come by and just give feedback, and it was really
Good.
nice to meet new people.
Good.
So
Good.
I'm really looking forward to the
That's
one in
excellent.
February. I was a little nervous to see, how, if folks would find it helpful, and I was just really overwhelmed with how positive the
Good.
experience was.
That's
So
great. And it's nice that you're going to them, and that's your district, and let people come down and
Yeah.
chat. Excellent. So let's talk about some land use challenges that
Sure.
are facing the county, and public hearing has happened, and what's going on with some of those?
Well, you've probably been reading about in the Kitsap Sun and the CK Reporter about the county's remand from the Growth Hearings Board on our 2006 comprehensive plan. So before I took office in January of 2007, the prior Board of Commissioners passed a comprehensive plan update. The county has to have a comprehensive plan, and we have to update it on a regular
Correct.
basis to be able to comply with the Growth Management Act. Well, we've been in litigation over the past 6 years,
Oh.
and we, this past year got a decision that from the hearings board that basically directed the county to redraw our urban growth areas. And the order, in short, basically said the county erred in some ways, and we needed to address this. So here we are, even though it's 5 years, 6 years after the plan was initially adopted. We're now in the process of going out, getting public feedback on how we should redraw the lines for our urban growth areas. Kingston's affected, Silverdale urban growth area, the Central Kitsap urban growth area. So if you live in East Bremerton, that's your urban growth area. Port Orchard, Gorse. So we're in the process right now. We have a public hearing on our environmental impact statement and the 4 alternatives we're submitting. But this is going to be a very intense process over the next several months. We basically have till August to complete all this work in front of the hearings boards. But over the next several months, we're going to be doing a lot of intense outreach with the public to figure out how we resize the urban growth areas. The urban growth areas are going to shrink. They're going to be smaller. And property that has been zoned for urban development will now, revert to a rural zoning. We're trying to be very smart about how we approach this. There's a lot of infrastructure costs that we're going to be paying attention to. We have property that's been vested for development. We have pockets of development that occurred years ago that will make sense in a urban growth area and do not make sense in a rural designation. So we're looking at all these factors, but most importantly, the Board of County Commissioners is very committed to getting public feedback
Great.
and input so that we can make an informed decision. So
Folks go to the county website, of course, pay attention to local newspapers for information on how they can be a part of that process.
yeah, we've had a number of workshops
Great.
and in Central Kitsap and South Kitsap, and we're going to do everything we can to to be open and accessible. And if folks have a question, they should just email me at the county. My email address is jwbrown@co.kitsap.wa.us, and we want to provide that input to folks.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about the recent meeting with Ports and Department of Fish and Wildlife regarding access to saltwater. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
Access.
right. The commissioners, we wanted for the first time since I've been on the board, and I think for the first time in a very long time, to bring together various parties and jurisdictions that help provide saltwater access, recreational access to our waterways here in Kitsap County. We're surrounded by Puget Sound and Hood Canal. We have over 260 miles of saltwater shoreline in our community, and we have a county of about 250,000 people. It's really important that the public has access to enjoy our waterways. A lot of folks move to Kitsap County and choose to retire here or just live here in general because of our unique place in Puget Sound. So we invited the ports. Kitsap County has the most port districts out of any county in Washington State.
I would believe that, yeah.
So, a lot of folks know about the Port of Bremerton, Port of Kingston, Port of Silverdale, but we have the Port of Waterman, the Port of Eglon, the Port of Indianola, Port of Manchester. So many of the ports came to this meeting. Fish and Wildlife came to the meeting.
Nice.
They're responsible for Misery Point and the Point No Point boat launches, which are saltwater access points, along with facilities on several of our lakes in Kitsap County. Some of the cities were there as well. Really, the hope was to learn more about what people are working on and try to figure out how can we do a better job of communicating.
Great.
For most of these ports, they're in unincorporated Kitsap County. Or in the case of the Port of Bremerton, they have facilities in unincorporated Kitsap County. I think it's really important that the county is a good partner with them to help expand saltwater recreational access and help promote tourism. Ports have that dual mission of promoting economic development, promoting recreation. And, I think we, should figure out ways that we can better communicate, work together. Sometimes we're not clear about what priorities for the ports are. Sometimes the ports need help from the county or from the cities on support. Right. And, as it pertains to the Department of Fish and Wildlife, I think we've had a couple situations come up over the years out of Misery Point and now up at Point No Point in Hansville area, where we can help the state and state agencies communicate better with local residents on the impacts of what improvements would make, and then working with various stakeholders to try to come up with solutions that the community will be supportive of.
Great.
So, I unfortunately had I think we all kind of had a frustrating experience 5 years ago out of Misery Point, where there was a boat launch designed. There was concern from the neighbors,
Right.
and then there wasn't the flexibility to be able to go back and maybe make some changes that would allow the project to move forward. And if we would have been able to talk more sooner and get folks on the same page and get questions answered, I don't think we would have run into those challenges. So the state and Fish and Wildlife was very willing to, try to renew that collaborative spirit, so to speak. So
Good.
we look forward to working with them.
Excellent.
And I thank all the ports for coming out and meeting with us in our chambers.
Excellent. There's going to be some changes at the end of February regarding the county commissioner meetings.
Right.
They are going to be live. The county commissioners are going to change and meet in the morning.
Right.
And that has, I think those changes came about with a concern for staff time. Many folks were staying late to participate, staff that needed to participate in the commissioners' meeting. Tell us how you came to this decision.
Well, we changed the evening meetings in 2008 on the Board of County Commissioners. So
you used to be mornings.
For decades, we met during the day, and most counties do meet during the day for their regular business meetings. So we had moved to the evening meetings in the hope of trying to be more open and accessible. And I think for some of our hearings, we've noticed that there are more folks that are showing up, but I think more times than not, we've had a situation where, the same folks that are coming to the evening meetings probably would be coming to the day meetings. So what we decided to do, and as we're looking at how we can be efficient at the county, one of the things that's a real challenge for us is that by having the evening meetings, we're shifting around staff time. And we're still closed on Fridays at the admin building, so we still have limited hours at the county. What I think we're hoping to do is a couple things. By moving back to the day meetings, we think we're going to enjoy some staff efficiencies. But what we're also going to do, and where I've always been on this issue, is that it is a long drive, whether it's a day meeting or an evening meeting, for folks to drive down to Port Orchard in many parts of the county. And if you live in South Kitsap, it's not a problem. But if there's an issue affecting Silverdale or Seaback, or if there's an issue affecting Suquamish or Kingston or Hansville, that's a long drive.
That's right.
And what we've talked about on the board is moving back to the day meetings every 2 weeks, which is what we did for decades at the county, but then making making a change so that when we have public hearings that are affecting specific parts of the county, instead of having all those public hearings in Port Orchard and the chambers,
Nice.
moving and having those public hearings in the communities that are directly affected by them when appropriate. We just had this happen a week ago, where we had a public hearing in Port Orchard at night, and it affected Port Gamble and Suquamish. The hearing was on changes to zoning tables that only affected Suquamish and the Port Gamble areas. We had, I think we had 20 or so business people and property owners and residents of North Kitsap come down to Port Orchard. And what I would have rather have done is go and have the meeting up in Kingston or Paulsbo.
Right.
For a lot of those folks, they had to drive 45 minutes to get to the courthouse in Port Orchard.
Makes a lot
and
of
drive
sense.
45 minutes back at night on an evening
Good.
meeting. And the feedback that I've gotten with folks is that for a lot of folks that have families, that's very difficult to do. So when we have public hearings on issues that we think the community is going to be concerned about, we're going to try to change our approach so that, yes, for our regular business meetings are going to be during the day, but when we have public hearings that necessitate going out and meeting with the public, we're going to try to do a better job of changing our venue. So we're going to be
Good.
working with the city of Paulsbo, see if we could possibly use their chambers at times.
Perfect.
And we may have some situations come up where if the county has a good example, something like the comprehensive plan update, it's affecting all parts of the county, so we may choose to have a couple hearings at different times in different locations.
Great.
So we're gonna improve the process.
Very good. Very
So-
good. Well, I think we've pretty much filled up all our time. I'm going to let you say your few closing comments. Thanks for coming in today.
Well, thank you, Shar, for all your great questions, and again, I hope this has been informative. I think our next
I think so.
Commissioner's Corner, we're going to try to take the show on the road.
Yeah, we're going to go out.
And go see what's happening out in the community. So I appreciate folks tuning in, and I hope you follow up with me if you have any questions. Thanks.